Good morning, afternoon, or evening, and thank you for joining me today for this presentation on leveraging the OmDreb data swap. I am your host, Grant Brown, the Manager of Technology and Member Services at the Oakville, Milton, and District Real Estate Board. And this webinar is provided to you with the purpose of providing our valued members with the information that they need to ensure that their listings look in a great way when they go through the data swap and arrive in Stratus, the MLS system used by TREB, for their agents to view and their clients also. I'm going to get this out of the way right now because I know everybody is very excited. When are we going to get the data? Well, I can tell you it is coming soon. And here is the most important bit: very soon. I can actually tell you at this point, although we have not announced an official date, that it will be at the beginning of April. We are confident on this, and all we are doing at this point is aligning the resources for the respective MLS system programmers, CoreLogic staff, and the staff the programmers and database administrators who manage Stratus, to basically align their schedules so that we can go live. But I can tell you that a lot of work has happened over the past few months to make this a viable solution, and we're very excited about it. So yes, it is coming at the beginning of April. I'm very happy to announce that. All right, so let's get started. First and foremost, the most important thing is what gets seen. Now, the data swap, it deals with data in very specific areas. We are exchanging listing data in Oakville, Milton, and Halton Hills only. So OmDreb listings that lie within Oakville, Milton, and Halton Hills will go through the data swap to Stratus to be viewed by TREB agents and their clients. And similarly, TREB listings that are in Oakville, Milton, and Halton Hills will come through the data swap and be inserted into the Matrix system, where you will be able to search and send those to your clients in Matrix. It is very important to remember that this is for Oakville, Milton, and Halton Hills only. And to be more specific, this does not include listings that are in Burlington or in Mississauga. All right, so if you do have a listing, even if you log into Matrix and you have a listing and you load it and it is in Burlington or Mississauga, that listing will not go automatically through the data swap to Stratus, the MLS system used by TREB. Another important point is that you will not see all of the TREB listings in these areas. You will not see all the TREB listings. You will only see TREB listings in these areas above. I've had a lot of people come to me, and it's phrased differently in different ways. It's like, when are we merging with TREB? When are we getting all the TREB data? It is important to keep this in mind. You are not going to see all TREB data. You are only going to see listings from TREB that are in Oakville, Milton, and Halton Hills. It does come up and people are like, can I give up my TREB membership? Because we do recognize that there's a challenge to having two memberships. I know people who have three memberships. They have one with RAB, they have one with OmDreb, they have one with TREB, and you might be one of these people. And so you're not going to see all of TREB data. So if there is an issue where, or not an issue, but if you have the opportunity to be working with a client who is looking for something in downtown Toronto, or they want you to list a condo in downtown Toronto, this data swap will not satisfy that. You probably want to hang on to your TREB membership. We cannot advise whether you should or should not keep your TREB membership. That is a business decision that has to be made by each individual. So what I would recommend is that once the data swap launches, if you find that it does satisfy the vast majority of your needs, then you can make a decision at that point. But it is important to remember that this data swap affects these three areas only: Oakville, Milton, and Halton Hills. Now, this is also very important. This is an exclusive arrangement between Oakville, the Oakville, Milton, and District Real Estate Board, and TREB. All the other Ortus boards, we belong to a regional system consisting of 10 boards. Those 9 other boards will not see these listings. Only OmDreb members will see the TREB listings. So if you happen to have a colleague in your office who is a Mississauga member, or it could happen a Guelph member, for example, and you say, hey, have you seen this listing in Matrix? And you're referring to a listing, a TREB listing that has come through the data swap, and they're logging in with their board ID, which might be a Mississauga one, or even maybe a Niagara one. They're not going to see these listings, right? Only you will see this logging in with your OM ID. So what is the largest challenge with respect to the data swap? Because by and large, it sounds fantastic. We're going to get access to a whole bunch of data. However, getting that data from Treb and searching it and sharing those listings with our clients is by far the best benefit. However, there are some things that we have to consider if you are loading a listing and if you're not a dual member and you want to take advantage of the data swap. And the largest challenge, to be honest, is capacity. And it simply has to do with the age of the technology that's being used. And there are two different capacities. For example, Matrix has a large capacity. We know this. We've seen, for example, the amount of photos that we can have has grown over the years. We can have 1,500 characters in our public remarks. And so we have lots of room to put in all kinds of great information. And I feel like it's like the good old Grand Caravan. I had one of these bad boys back in the day when I had my young family. You know, you pile all kinds of stuff in it. You can fold the seats on the floor. You can have all kinds of stuff in it. Stratus, on the other hand, while a great system, it just doesn't have those same characteristics that Matrix does. And when you have one system that has the capacity to have a lot of information and another one that doesn't have as much capacity, and we're sharing data between the two systems, there are some challenges that come that way. And so what we are going to talk about here, and the purpose of this, is to address some of these, highlight them so that you are best prepared and you can enter your listing in a way that will allow you to harness this data swap and overcome some of these challenges. So I love this meme. Anybody who's Lord of the Rings fan, so one does not simply walk into Mordor. One does not simply swap data. We have to be mindful of what it is we're sending. So let's have a look at some of these things. Here are the important considerations. There's 5 of them. The first one is the public remarks. Second, realtor remarks. Photos, rooms, and finally supplements. So we're going to talk about all of these in a little bit, and then I'm going to talk about a few other things just which are informative that will help you out. So in Matrix, we have the ability to enter in our public remarks up to 1,500 characters. That is a lot of information that you can put in and describe all of the great things about the property that you're listing for your client. I've had people tell me that this is not enough. And conversely, I'll be honest, this is one of the challenges that we have in trying to print a member full listing on one page. And we keep adding all kinds of space for you to write all these great things about the property. At some point, you can only make the font so small. So this is what we get, which is very generous, 1,500 characters. Conversely, when it comes to the data swap, Stratus allows for 463 characters. Literally 1/3 of the amount of space is allotted to describing the property that you are listing. So I'm just going to back up here so you can visually see this. That's 1,500 characters which we can enter, and this is what Stratus can handle. All right, so how do we deal with this? Well, you'll notice down in the bottom left-hand corner, we see a handy little tool. It tells us the characters remaining. Now, I've got 1,037. So I've entered in the information that you see on the screen, and I know it's just gibberish. However, this is 463 characters. So down in the bottom left-hand corner, this counts down as you type. Every character you type, this decreases by 1. When you get down to 1,037 characters, that is the magic number. That means that you have reached the limit of what it is that you can put in your listing for public remarks that will be seen on Stratus. And what happens is your listing, if you type more than the 1,000 or the 463 characters, when it goes through the data swap, it's going to be truncated on the other side. So it'll simply be chopped off. And you can imagine that this would be important, because if you were just happily typing away and describing something wonderful about the property and suddenly it's just chopped off, that could leave a lot of questions. You know, it could be something as simple as this beautiful home comes with a hot water heater, and then it gets chopped off. And it doesn't say whether it's owned, the hot water heater, or whether it's at a monthly rental fee. So you can just imagine what could be misinterpreted with that information being just chopped off at that point. So let's have a look at the next one, Realtor remarks, we have 850 characters in which you can have to describe basically the property, important information for other realtors who may be interested in putting in an offer or arranging a showing for their clients. On the other hand, Stratus allows for 250 characters. That's quite a bit of a difference. There's 850 characters, and this is 250 characters. So quite a bit less. And again, if you look down in the bottom left-hand corner where it says characters remaining, I've gone to 599 because I added a period there at the end, but the magic number is 600 characters. So you really don't want to type more than you need to. You don't want anything cut off. So keep your eye down in the bottom left-hand corner, characters remaining, 599 or 600 characters. After that, it's chopped off when it goes through the data swap. Now, what are the strategies that you can use? And I've given this a lot of thought, and I've thrown it out there, and I haven't really heard anybody say they've got a different strategy. So maybe this is something you want to give some thought to. I would write the first 460 characters for the public remarks or 250 characters for the realtor remarks with TREB in mind. If you were to load a listing in TREB, so let's say you often interboard with TREB and you get their data sheet and you know how much room that you have. So I would write it like that, right? And then what you can do after that first bit that you know is going to be seen by TREB agents, phrase it so that there's a natural break, because there's nothing stopping you after those limits to continue on and describe and take advantage of the rest of that space that you have in Matrix, because your listing will still show all of this information to all Ortus or all OMDREB members in Matrix and all of the other Ortus members of the 9 other boards of Ortus and RAB and 12 boards of the Ontario Collective, because we know now, thanks to the feature Intra-Matrix, they can come into our Matrix system and then see your listing also. So basically do a Coles Notes for the first 460 or 250 characters, and then give it a little natural break, and you could even pad it with spaces, and then continue writing because people are still going to see that information. I did have a couple of really interesting comments where people thought that even though your listing will go through the data swap and only the either first 463 characters for public remarks or 250 characters for realtor remarks will be seen by TREB agents on Stratus, the rest of your information will still be visible to OMDREB members in Matrix. It's not being truncated in our system at all. All we have to do is think about how can we put concise information in these sort of limitations, these imposed limitations up front. And as somebody who was ex-military, when I was a young sailor, they would tell us when we were doing military writing, that it's possible that the mantra was brevity without loss of clarity. And you can write clear, concise information in a short space. It takes a little bit of practice, but it can certainly be done. All right, let's move on to another consideration. Photos. So in Matrix, we are very fortunate that we can have up to 50 photos on our listing, high quality photos, 50 of them. Stratus, on the other hand, if you've ever interboarded or if you're a dual member, you know that Stratus only accepts 20 photos. So what happens in this case? You're more than welcome to load up to 50 photos in Matrix, but when it goes through the data swap, any photo after the 20th photo is going to be truncated. So here, again, you have to be mindful and give some good consideration to what are these first 20 photos that you're going to put on your listing. Now, I do realize that people like to really curate their listing and make it look awesome for their client. And quite often everybody has a method. It's like it either starts outside, you go through the front door. It's almost like a virtual tour where you walk through the house on the main floor and then you go upstairs and then downstairs and in the backyard. And there's lots of great photos that you want to show within that 50 photos. However, if you know that your listing is going to go through the data swap to be seen by agents in TREB and you're not loading it in both systems, then this is something that you want to keep in mind. What are the first 20 photos that you really feel tell the story about this great property that you're listing for your client? And then make sure you load those first and then come up with some other method of, however it is you want to organize the other 30 if you want. So what is the strategy? As I said, arrange your photos appropriately, keeping in mind that only the first 20 photos will go through the data swap. Now, there's a caveat to this, and that is if you are dual loading your listing anyways, regardless of the fact that there's a data swap, you're a dual member, you load it in Stratus and you load it in Matrix. If that's the case, then you don't have to give so much thought to this. And I'll tell you why in a little bit when we talk about the issues surrounding dual members and what happens with duplicates in just a few minutes. And also this reminder I'll throw out there, 50 photos is a limit. It's not a goal. It's great that we have 50 photos. You don't have to load 50 photos. You can simply load your best 20 photos. However, I completely understand why people would want to load all 50 of these great photos, because when you load it in Matrix, that listing, that's going to go to realtor.ca, and that's where the public is going to see your listing with all these great photos. So I have no trouble everybody having 50 photos on their listing. Rooms is a consideration. Matrix allows you to input 25 rooms. I have had people tell me, well, there's a lot of beautiful homes in Oakville, and I've had people tell me that 25 rooms simply isn't enough. However, Stratus accepts only 12 rooms. So dual members, you've probably already done these mental gymnastics and decide, okay, well, there's 30 rooms in this house. What are the 12 rooms I'm going to put on my listing? And so if you're entering it in Matrix, looking to take advantage of the data swap, and you're not going to be loading your listing also in Stratus with Treb, then give some thought of what are the 12 rooms that you want to have in there, and what you want to do is put those 12 rooms first, because any room over the 12th room is going to be truncated. Just like what happens with photos, where any photo after the 20th photo gets truncated. And finally, supplements. Matrix allows you to upload 5 PDF documents to your listing. We see this often, and it's probably a floor plan, Schedule Form 801, Schedule B, that kind of stuff. Maybe an additional flyer or something like that. Unfortunately, Stratus will not be accepting any of these documents that we add on our listing. So while there's precious little space for realtor remarks, you might want to throw in there, contact listing agent for additional documentation. That might be something that you want to do. Now, here's just a summary. We've gone through all of these items. I'm going to put it on the screen here just as a little table for you to look at. Things to keep in mind. OmDrive gets 50 photos. Treb will take 20 of them. So make sure your first 20 photos are your best ones. Rooms, we have 25 rooms in Matrix, and Treb will take 12 of them. So arrange your rooms, accordingly. Make sure you're highlighting the rooms that you're really excited about, and they go through first. Public remarks. This is tricky, and I understand that this is tricky, that we get 1,500 characters and they have 463. So we'll have to do a little bit of forethought on that to make sure that that first 463 characters tells a story. For anybody who's a dual member between OmDrive and Treb, you can probably already look at your listing and go, I know exactly what I would write for that listing to show up in Stratus. So maybe you just want to write that first, and then take the opportunity to go through and then write the rest of the stuff for your Matrix listing. Realtor remarks, 850 characters, and Treb gives 250 characters, so a full 600 characters less. So that 250 characters, make sure that you are really describing exactly what is important for the other agents at that point. And supplements. We have 5 supplements on our listing, and regrettably, Stratus will not be accepting any of these documents. So here's a few additional considerations. We have to map, there are thousands of fields that we have to map between the two systems, and here's a couple notable ones that we think people may use during their search. There are many, but this is one of them. Duplex. If your property is a duplex, OmDrive gives you the opportunity to say it's a duplex and it's either up and down or side by side. Treb, on the other hand, simply says it's a duplex. There is no further description of whether it's up and down or side to side. And so what we have done, because all we're getting is it's a duplex and we don't know if it's up and down or side to side, we have mapped all of these to be side to side. So if you are looking for an up and down duplex in Matrix, once the data swap has been launched, then what I would recommend you do is choose both up and down and side to side in your search criteria, and then you will get all of the Treb listings also. So square footage is mandatory for OmDrive. It's not mandatory for TREB. In fact, there's nowhere to enter square footage. They only use ranges. So these will be blank in Matrix when you're doing your searches and on the listings. And then finally, of course, TREB uses square foot ranges heavily. We calculate ours. So for example, a square foot range would be 1,001 to 1,500 square feet, where you enter in your listing, say it's 1,235 square feet, and Matrix looks and says, oh yeah, that fits in the 1,001 to 1,500, and that's what shows on your listing. So it does that calculation for you. And TREB, everybody specifies a range. And so that's what we've done, is our very best to match logical mappings, because the ranges aren't the same. They're a little bit different. So we've done what we can to match those the best we can. So for dual members, now this is very important, and it's easy to get caught up and a little bit confused by this. But in essence, it's quite simple. So what happens if you are a dual member and you load your listing in both Stratus and Matrix, and the data swap exists? Because what happens is every listing that gets entered gets sent to the opposing system. All right. So here's what happens. We don't want duplicates. We don't need to see two of every listing in the system if it's been loaded in both Stratus and Matrix. So here's what happens. If you are using Stratus, if you're a TREB member and you've loaded a listing in Matrix because you're an OMDREB member also, and you're a TREB member and you've loaded it in Stratus, then what happens is the listing from Matrix will come through the data swap, and then when it reaches Stratus, it is simply ignored and you will never see it. So the only listing that you will see of the two that you've entered in two systems is the one that you're logged into. Similarly, if a duplicate is found in Matrix because it's been loaded in Stratus also, then the TREB listing is ignored and you will not see it. Nobody will see it. Your clients will not get two, because we certainly don't want that. And in fact, the one listing that only the listing that gets entered into your like for example, if you're an OMDREB member and you load it in Matrix, it goes to Realtor.ca. If you're a dual member and you load it in Matrix and you load it in Stratus, both of those go to Realtor.ca. But if you are only an OMDREB member and your listing goes through to Stratus, only your OMDREB listing will go to Realtor.ca. The one that goes through the data swap will not go to Realtor.ca, causing further duplication. So I've tried to illustrate this a little bit, and this is the first time anybody's seen this, so I hope you enjoy it. So here on the left, we have Stratus, the MLS system used by TREB, and on the right, we have Matrix, which is what OMDREB and Ortus uses. So what happens is, if you load a listing in Matrix and you load a listing in Stratus, so you've dual loaded this listing, your listing from Matrix will be entered, it will go through the data swap, and when it arrives in Stratus, it is actually just ignored. Nobody will see it. And similarly, the Stratus listing will go through the data swap, it'll arrive in Matrix, it'll do a comparison and say, oh, it's already here, and so it is removed from the system. So if you are a dual member loading your listing in both systems, you will not see two of your listing in each of those systems. And that is the most important thing. And because of this, if you are somebody who is dual loading your listing, and you're going to continue to dual load your listings in both systems, you do not have to worry about trying to monkey with your public comments to fit in some natural sort of phrase in the first 463 characters, because when it goes to Stratus, it's not going to be seen anyways, because it's going to say, oh, it's already here, and it's going to drop it. And similarly, your Stratus listing comes over to Matrix, and it's going to say, oh, you've already loaded it in Matrix, so don't show the Stratus listing. And it's going to leave your Matrix listing the way you want it to. And so I hope that makes sense. Please email helpdesk@omdreb.om.ca if you need further clarification on that. But this is important, because we've had some people who are just questioning this. And so if you're dual loading your listings, basically don't do anything different than what you're doing now, and you'll be fine. It's only if you are not a dual member and your listing is going to go through to TREB, that's when you want to be very cautious about how you enter in your information, what 20 photos go first, what the first 463 characters for your public remarks, and your first 250 characters of your realtor remarks. For non-dual members, that's important. Dual members, if you're going to continue to load in both systems, continue to do exactly what you're doing, and you'll be absolutely fine. If you're loading in Stratus only, and I realize that for most of our members who are listening to this, you're an OMDREB member, and you don't really have to think about this, or you may have somebody in your office who is just a TREB agent and you're working alongside them. I want to be clear about this. When TREB listings come through the data swap and land in Matrix, remember back at the beginning I said this is an exclusive arrangement with Omdreb. What that means is TREB listings that come through into Matrix are seen by Omdreb members only. That's 1,800 members get to see that, 1,800 Omdreb members. They are not seen by the rest of Ortus and the Ontario Collective, which is potentially another 10 to 15,000 more members. So if you're an Omdreb member only, or sorry, if you're a TREB member only and you load your listing, you're probably better off looking to interboard your listing like you have been already with Omdreb, because it's not coming through the data swap. It is going to be seen by all of Ortus. If you rely on the fact that you've just loaded in Stratus and it comes through the data swap into Matrix, it's only seen by 1,800 members. And the reason I'm pointing this out is I've had people say to me, Grant, I find it so much easier to load a listing in Stratus than I do in Matrix. And I understand that because we have a lot more mandatory fields, but this describes the property much better. So if your thought is, well, it's easier to load in Stratus, so I'm just going to do that and it's going to end up in Matrix anyways, just keep in mind that only Omdreb members will see your listing, not all of Ortus, which is the true strength of being part of a regional system. Is you load your listing in Matrix, it gets seen by the 10 boards of Ortus, plus Hamilton, which we have a data share with, plus the 12 boards of the Ontario Collective, who get to use Intramatrix to come in and see your listing. So basically, you get far more mileage out of loading your listing in Matrix than you would simply loading it in Stratus. So some final points. How will you identify TREB listings? They will be identified. We know that they all start generally with a letter like W or C or X, and it's going to be prepended with a T. So for example, a TREB listing would look like TW4351842. That's how you'll see them. This is nothing new for us because we've been doing this with Hamilton for a while. Hamilton listings begin with an H, and when they come through the data share with Hamilton, an X gets prepended on it. So we've come to know and love the XH listings, and right away at a glance, we know that's a Hamilton listing. TREB listings will begin with a T. TREB data will go back to January 1st, 2018. So there was a question about how much history will we have. We are unable to have the listing history on those back to the first. However, anything that gets entered into any new listings that come through the data swap, we will be able to track listing history. So there's a price change? Was it suspended and then back on market? That will happen beginning when the data swap happens. But for the data back for the year that we haven't had the data so far, it'll just show those listings, which should be pretty minor. I don't know how many properties change hands and how much listing changes there are in a year. There is no need, this is great news, there is no need for you to recreate your auto emails for your clients. What's going to happen is we're going to go live with the data swap at the beginning of April, and then what's going to happen is your client is suddenly going to get a bunch of emails with new listings that match your search criteria, because we simply did not have access to them before, and we will have access to them now. So no need to recreate auto emails, which is a wonderful thing. And questions have come up about monthly statistics. We publish our MLS stats every month on the beginning of the month. And the question has been, will TREB data be integrated into that? Both TREB and Omdreb are having discussions about this internally as to how we're going to handle it. Because the statistics don't incorporate what we normally report on, which would be Oakville, Milton, Halton Hills, Burlington, and Mississauga. For years and years and years, we've been publishing statistics on that. If we were to suddenly incorporate TREB data into that, then it would look a little odd, because we would see listing statistics and sales would look like they spiked tremendously in Oakville, Milton, and Halton Hills, and nothing has changed at all in Mississauga and Burlington. And so we're really having a hard look at how we're going to do this. We may report them separately. So again, TREB is not sure how they're going to handle it, and we're thinking about it too. We're going to have some discussions because we would like to be in alignment with each other. So at the moment, that has not been decided. However, if anybody has gone in and used the stats tool in Matrix, I think it's the third tab over from the left. There's home, search, and then stats. If you were to run stats and use the stats tool for sales in a particular area in a particular time frame, it will report TREB listings that are in the system. All right, that's the information that I wanted to convey to you today. I hope I've covered most of the information that you may have been, or most of the questions that you may have been thinking about. If I have not, by all means, please send any comments or additional questions to helpdesk@omdreb.on.ca, and I assure you that one of our staff will be happy to reply to you as soon as we can. So thank you for joining us, and have a great day.